Look, buddy, this doesn't concern you. Just walk away.
Sir, she's American. On what basis are you detaining her?
This is federal business. Step back or it's obstruction.
Then arrest me. You're not taking her without probable cause.
Final warning, pal. Move aside. We're conducting immigration
You
enforcement.
have no warrant. Get your super...
Sometimes resistance looks like a man in a black beret standing between federal agents and an innocent woman refusing to move until they follow the law they claim to enforce. On the morning of March 15th, 2025, in the heart of Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood, that's exactly what happened when Marcus Vance, a member of the Community Defense League doing community patrol, saw 3 IC agents attempting to detain a black woman on her way to work. What the agents' body cams captured wasn't just an intervention, it was a masterclass in Know Your Rights activism community solidarity and what happens when people refuse to let injustice happen on their watch. By the time it was over, the woman was free. The agents were facing disciplinary action, and the footage had become required viewing for anyone who believes that sometimes the only thing standing between oppression and justice is ordinary people who decide they've seen enough. The morning was bright and clear, one of those early spring days when Chicago wakes up under blue skies and mild temperatures. March in Chicagoland meant sunshine without the summer heat, comfortable enough for people to be out on the streets, walking to CTA stations, heading to work, living their daily lives. The Pilsen neighborhood was awake. Shops opening, buses, running people, moving through a community that had long been a center of diverse life in Chicago. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Marcus Vance was 29 years old, born and raised in Chicago, a community organizer who joined the Community Defense League 2 years earlier after watching too many neighbors harassed by law enforcement. He wasn't looking for confrontation that morning. He was doing what the League had always done: community patrol, walking the neighborhood, checking on elders, making sure people felt safe, wearing the distinctive black beret and jacket that announced his presence, his commitment, his refusal to let his community be treated like enemy territory. Elena Rossi was 42, a black woman who'd lived in Chicago for 15 years. Born in Boston, worked as a medical billing specialist for a hospital system downtown. She was walking to the Pilsen CTA station at 7:47 a.m., her usual routine coffee in one hand, phone in the other, earbuds, and just another commuter starting another workday. The IC agents' body cams activated when they exited their vehicle at 7:45 a.m. Special Agent Daniel Cho, Asian American, mid-30s, 6 years with IC. Special Agent Sarah Jenkins, black, late 20s, 3 years in the field. Special Agent Miguel Torres, Latino, early 40s, 9 years with the agency. 3 federal agents conducting what they called targeted enforcement operations in immigrant communities, looking for people who match descriptions in their database. They saw Elena walking down 18th Street and decided she looked like someone worth questioning. No tip, no warrant, just an assumption based on appearance and location. The body cam footage shows the agents pulling over, parking, and approaching Elena on the sidewalk. She had her earbuds in, didn't notice them until Cho stepped directly in front of her, blocking her path. She pulled out one earbud, startled. "Excuse me, Immigration and Customs Enforcement," Cho said, showing his badge. "We need to see your identification." Elena's face went from confused to alarmed. "My what? I'm just walking to work." "We need to verify your immigration status. ID, please." "Immigration status, I'm American. I was born in Boston." Jenkins stepped closer, her hand near her belt. "Ma'am, we still need to see identification. Driver's license, passport, something proving citizenship." "I don't carry my birth certificate to catch the L train," Elena said, her voice rising with frustration and fear. "This is my neighborhood. I'm going to work. Why are you stopping me?" "Ma'am, we need to see your identification. You're being detained for immigration verification." "I'm American. I was born in Boston. This is my neighborhood." That's when Marcus Vance came around the corner, saw what was happening, and intervened. The body cam shows him approaching quickly, his black beret visible, his phone already out and recording. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" Cho turned to him. "Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you." "Sister, did you ask for help?" Marcus called out, ignoring the agent's command. Elena looked at him, relief flooding her face. "Yes, they're trying to detain me. I told them I'm American, but they won't listen." Marcus positioned himself between Elena and the agents, his body language protective but not aggressive. "She said she's American. On what basis are you detaining her?" "Sir, this is federal business," Torres said, stepping forward. "Step back or you'll be arrested for obstruction." Then arrest me, Marcus said, his phone still recording pointed at the agents. But you're not taking her without probable cause. We're conducting immigration enforcement, Cho said, his voice hardening. Final warning. Move aside. Marcus didn't budge. She invoked her right to remain silent and requested an attorney. You have no warrant. What's your legal justification? This doesn't concern you, Jenkins said. Last chance to step back. It concerns me when federal agents violate citizens' rights in our community, Marcus replied, his voice steady and clear. The law requires you to release her. We're all recording this, and they were. Other people on the street had stopped, pulled out their phones, started recording. A store owner came out of his shop. An elderly woman called out asking if everything was okay. Within 2 minutes, there were at least a dozen people watching, documenting, bearing witness. Marcus pulled a laminated card from his pocket. Know Your Rights information published by the ACLU and immigrant rights organizations. Sister, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to refuse to answer questions. You have the right to speak to an attorney. You do not have to show them documents unless they have a warrant with your name on it. Elena nodded, her hands shaking, but her voice stronger. I'm exercising my right to remain silent. I want to speak to an attorney. The crowd was growing. More phones out. Someone started live streaming. A man in the crowd called out, "Leave her alone. She didn't do anything." Another voice. "We see you. We're recording everything." Cho reached for his radio. "We need backup." Multiple people interfering with enforcement. Marcus stayed calm, his phone steady, his voice clear. "We're not interfering. We're witnessing. This woman has invoked her rights. You have no probable cause for this detention. The law requires you to release her." Jenkins tried a different approach, attempting to speak directly to Elena. "Ma'am, if you're a citizen, just show us ID, and this can be over." "She doesn't have to prove her innocence," Marcus interjected, his legal knowledge on full display. "You have to have probable cause for detention. Being black and walking to work isn't probable cause." "Sir, you're obstructing a federal investigation," Torres said, his frustration evident. "I'm exercising my First Amendment right to witness and document law enforcement," Marcus countered. "What specific articulable facts led you to believe this woman violated immigration law?" The agents exchanged looks. Cho tried again. "She matches a description we're working from." "What description? Be specific." "I'll wait." "Clothing or just black woman walking down the street?" Cho's jaw tightened. No answer. A car pulled up. Another League member, a woman named Chloe Bennett, wearing the same black beret. She got out with a legal pad and a camera, started documenting badge numbers, names, timestamps. "Officers, I'm documenting this interaction," Chloe announced. "Badge numbers, please." "You don't have authority to demand our badge numbers," Torres said. "Actually, under Illinois law, peace officers must identify themselves when requested. You're operating in our state. Your names and badge numbers, please." The three agents exchanged looks. This wasn't going how they'd planned. A simple stop had turned into a documented confrontation with community organizers who knew the law, surrounded by witnesses recording everything. Cho tried once more. "Ma'am, final opportunity. Show identification or we're taking you into custody." "On what charge?" Marcus demanded, stepping closer but maintaining a non-threatening posture. "What crime has she committed? What law has she broken?" "Failure to provide documentation during an immigration investigation." "That's not a crime," Marcus said. "Citizens have no obligation to carry proof of citizenship. Try again." "You're interfering with federal officers," Jenkins said to Marcus. "I'm standing on a public sidewalk, recording public servants performing their duties and informing a citizen of her constitutional rights. Which of those activities is illegal?" A Chicago police officer appeared, pulled from the nearby station by the commotion. Officer Maya Lin, a Korean-American woman who'd worked the Pilsen area for years and knew Marcus from community meetings. "What's going on here?" she asked, her hand on her radio. "Federal immigration enforcement," Cho said. "We need you to clear these people." Officer Lin looked at the scene. ICE agents. A black woman clearly distressed Marcus and Chloe, documenting a crowd of neighbors recording. "Does she have a warrant?" "We're conducting administrative immigration enforcement." "That's not an answer. Is there a warrant with her name on it?" Cho hesitated. "No, but then she has the right to leave unless you're charging her with a crime." "Are you charging her with a crime?" "She's being detained for immigration verification." Officer Lin turned to Elena. "Ma'am, are you a U.S. citizen?" Yes, I was born in Boston. I'm just trying to get to work. Lynn turned back to the IC agents. She stated she's a citizen. She's invoked her right to remain silent and requested an attorney. Unless you have probable cause or a warrant, you need to let her go. This is federal jurisdiction, Jenkins protested. And this is Chicago. You're not taking anyone from this sidewalk without legal justification. So either show me a warrant or explain your probable cause, because right now this looks like harassment. Marcus added, Officer Lynn is right. You approached this woman without reasonable suspicion. She's told you she's a citizen. She's invoked her rights. You have no legal basis to detain her further. We'll determine what legal basis we have, Cho shot back. You already determined that, Marcus said, and you came up empty. That's why you're stalling. That's why you can't articulate probable cause. That's why you're hoping she'll just submit to prove something she doesn't have to prove. The standoff continued for another 3 minutes. ICE agents insisting they had authority. Marcus and Chloe documenting everything. Officer Lynn standing firm. The crowd growing larger. More phones recording. A news van pulling up after someone called the local station. Finally, Cho made a decision. We'll verify her status at another time. She's free to go. Marcus didn't move. That sounds like a threat. Are you planning to harass this woman again? If we have cause to question her citizenship, we'll do so legally. You didn't have cause this time, Marcus said firmly. What makes you think you'll have cause next time? Officer Lynn intervened. Ma'am, you're free to go. These agents have no basis to detain you. If they approach you again without a warrant, call 911 and ask for Chicago PD. We'll respond. Elena was shaking. Adrenaline and fear and relief all mixed together. Thank you, she said to Marcus, to Chloe, to Officer Lynn, to the crowd that had gathered to protect her. Marcus walked with her to the CTA station, Chloe following, making sure she got on the train safely before the IC agents could change their minds. The whole interaction from first contact to Elena boarding the train took 18 minutes. 18 minutes? That would change everything. The Bodycam footage went public within hours. The local news ran it that evening. National outlets picked it up the next day. The image of a Community Defense League member standing between IC and a black woman refusing to move became viral. Should community organizations have the right to intervene in potentially unlawful detentions, or should witnesses stay silent and hope for justice later? Comment below, because what Marcus Vance did that morning, using his knowledge of the law and his body as a barrier, is the kind of direct action that prevents injustice in real time, not years later in a courtroom. The complaints came fast. Elena filed one with IC, with the city, with civil rights organizations. Marcus filed on her behalf with multiple oversight agencies. The ACLU got involved, the Asian Law Caucus, the National Lawyers Guild. By the end of March, the pressure was building. ICE's internal investigation started in April. The Bodycam footage made it impossible to ignore. The agents had no tip about Elena specifically. No warrant, no database match. They'd approached her solely because she was a black woman walking in a neighborhood with immigrant residents, and they'd assumed she might be undocumented. When asked why they thought a black woman in Chicago might be undocumented, the agents couldn't articulate a reason beyond gut feeling and experience. When asked what about her behavior was suspicious, they had no answer. She was walking to work with coffee. That's not suspicious behavior. That's Tuesday morning in America. The investigation report, completed in June, concluded that the agents had violated ICE's own policies, on reasonable suspicion had failed to demonstrate probable cause, and had created unnecessary confrontation by refusing to release someone who'd invoked their rights recommendations, retraining, written reprimands, and temporary suspension. But Elena wanted more than internal discipline. She wanted accountability. She filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in July 2025 against the 3 agents personally and against IC as an agency. The charges included unlawful detention, racial profiling violation of Fourth Amendment rights, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit detailed everything: how Elena had been walking to work minding her business, how the agents approached her without cause, how they refused to accept her statement of citizenship, how they ignored her invocation of rights, how Marcus's intervention was the only thing that prevented her illegal detention, how she now had anxiety about leaving her home, about walking to work, about seeing federal vehicles. The discovery process revealed the pattern. Cho Jenkins and Torres had made 47 stops in the previous 6 months in Chicago neighborhoods. Of those 47 stops, 43 were of people of color. Of those 43, 31 were released after it was determined they were citizens or legal residents. 66% of their stops ended with no action because the person they detained hadn't done anything wrong. The pattern was clear. They were stopping people based on race and location, not on evidence or behavior. It was racial profiling with federal badges. The case went to trial in October 2025. The jury watched the body cam footage, all three agents' cameras showing the same scene from different angles. Elena being stopped, Marcus intervening, the crowd gathering, Officer Lynn demanding justification, the agents backing down only when faced with community resistance. The courtroom was packed. Community members filled the gallery. Local media covered every day of testimony. This wasn't just Elena's case. It had become a referendum on immigration enforcement tactics and community rights. Elena testified about the fear, the humiliation, the ongoing anxiety. I was walking to work. I do it every day. And suddenly 3 people with guns were demanding I prove I'm American. I was born in Boston. My parents were born in Massachusetts. My grandparents were born in Pennsylvania. How far back do I have to go to prove I belong here? Her voice broke when she described the moment she realized they might actually detain her. I kept thinking, what if Marcus hadn't been there? What if no one had stopped? Would they have taken me? Would I have missed work, lost my job, been put in detention for days, while they verified what I'd been telling them from the start? The only thing that saved me was community intervention. Her therapist testified about the PTSD diagnosis, the anxiety attacks, the way Elena now maps her route to work to avoid that block where it happened. She's developed hypervigilance around law enforcement. She can't see a federal vehicle without her heart racing. She's constantly checking over her shoulder. This is textbook traumatic stress from an unjust detention. Marcus testified about why he intervened. I've seen too many people detained illegally, too many families torn apart, too many citizens harassed. The League taught us that community protection means stepping up when you see injustice. That sister needed help, and I had the knowledge and the courage to provide it. I'd do it again tomorrow. The defense attorney tried to paint Marcus as an agitator, someone looking for confrontation. But Marcus remained calm, explaining his actions methodically. I didn't approach looking for a fight. I approached because I saw a black woman being detained by federal agents, and she was clearly distressed. When I asked if she needed help, she said yes. When I asked the agents for their probable cause, they couldn't articulate one. I stood there exercising my First Amendment right to witness and document a law enforcement action. That's not obstruction. That's civic participation. The defense pressed him. But you physically positioned yourself between the agents and Ms. Rossi. Isn't that obstruction? I stood on a public sidewalk, Marcus replied. I didn't touch anyone. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't prevent them from doing their jobs. I prevented them from violating someone's rights. There's a difference. You told them they had to release her. I informed them of the law. Citizens have that right. If a police officer is violating the Constitution, I have the right to tell them so. That's not obstruction, that's education. Officer Lynn testified about why she supported Marcus's intervention. Those agents had no legal basis for that detention. Mr. Vance was right to question their authority. Citizens have the right to witness law enforcement actions, to document them, to demand accountability. That's not obstruction. That's democracy. She also testified about the increasing tensions between IC and Chicago PD. We get calls constantly, ICE conducting stops without notifying us, creating confrontations in our jurisdiction, traumatizing residents we're trying to build trust with. It makes our jobs harder when federal agents treat our community like occupied territory. Chloe Bennett, the other League member who'd arrived during the incident, testified about documenting the interaction. I took down badge numbers times descriptions of what I observed. That's what we're trained to do. Create a record that can be used for accountability. The agents didn't like being documented, but documentation is legal. If they weren't doing anything wrong, they shouldn't have minded the cameras. Expert witnesses testified about racial profiling, about the psychological impact of being detained without cause, about how community intervention can prevent unlawful arrests and protect civil rights. Dr. Robert Hughes, a sociologist who'd studied immigration enforcement patterns, testified about the statistical evidence of racial profiling in IC operations. When 66% of your stops result in release because the person is a citizen or legal resident, that's not effective enforcement. That's systematic violation of people's rights. The numbers show a pattern of stopping people based on how they look, not on evidence of immigration violations. A constitutional law professor from Northwestern University, Professor Laura Mitchell, explained the legal framework. The Fourth Amendment protects all people in the United States from unreasonable search and seizure. Immigration status is not an exception. ICE agents must have reasonable suspicion of an immigration violation to detain someone. Walking to work while black is not reasonable suspicion. The agents violated Ms. Rossi's constitutional rights the moment they stopped her without cause. The defense tried to argue the agents had acted in good faith, that immigration enforcement is inherently difficult, that they'd released Elena as soon as the situation was clarified, but the body cam showed they'd only released her after sustained community pressure, after Officer Lynn demanded justification they couldn't provide, after it became clear they couldn't detain her without creating a larger incident. The prosecution's closing argument was delivered by attorney David Cohen, a veteran civil rights lawyer who'd taken Elena's case pro bono. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is simple. 3 federal agents stopped a woman who was committing no crime, violating no law, doing nothing except existing while black in her own neighborhood. They demanded she prove her citizenship. She told them she was American. They didn't believe her. They detained her anyway. The only thing that prevented her illegal arrest was a community member who knew the law and refused to stand aside. That's not how America is supposed to work. In America, you're innocent until proven guilty. You don't have to prove you belong here. They have to prove you don't. And they couldn't, because Ms. Rossi has belonged here her entire life. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Liable. The damages $850,000 total. $350,000 in compensatory damages for Elena's trauma and ongoing anxiety. $500,000 in punitive damages split among the 3 agents, and IC designed to deter future similar conduct. The verdict came down on November 18, 2025. Elena stood outside the courthouse with Marcus beside her, Chloe, other league members, community supporters, and spoke to the press. This verdict isn't just for me. It's for every person who's been stopped and questioned just for existing while black or brown. It's for every person who's been told they don't look American enough. It's for every person who needs someone to stand beside them when authority overreaches. Marcus Vance saved me that day. The community saved me. And now the courts have said what we already knew. What those agents did was wrong. Marcus spoke too. The league has always taught that community defense is community service. We patrol to protect. We document to hold power accountable. We intervene to prevent injustice. What happened on March 15th is what should happen every time someone's rights are violated. People step up, refuse to look away, and demand better. This verdict proves that resistance works. The 3 IC agents faced consequences beyond the lawsuit. Cho was demoted and transferred out of Chicagoland. Jenkins received a formal reprimand and mandatory retraining. Torres faced a 2-week suspension without pay. None lost their jobs entirely, but their careers were marked by this case. ICE implemented new policies for the Chicago field office. No stops without specific articulable probable cause. Mandatory recording of all interactions. Community liaison positions to rebuild trust. Whether these changes would stick remained to be seen. The Community Defense League used the victory as a teaching moment. They held community workshops on Know Your Rights, on how to document police interactions on when, and how to intervene safely. Marcus became a sought-after speaker, telling the story of March 15th at schools, community centers, churches. Elena used part of the settlement to support organizations fighting immigration enforcement overreach. She quit her hospital job and went to work for an immigrant rights nonprofit, using her experience to help others who'd been targeted. She wanted her trauma to mean something to create change. The body cam footage became a training tool not just for what not to do, but for what community intervention looks like when done right. Marcus didn't escalate. He didn't get physical.